The roar of jet engines dimmed as the Boeing 777 glided smoothly onto the tarmac at John F. Kennedy International Airport. Inside the business class cabin, Nadia Monroe adjusted her seat and rolled her shoulders, stiff after nearly 10 hours in the air from Frankfurt. The overhead lights brightened, signaling the end of the flight. For Nadia, however, this marked the beginning of something she hadn't expected. She had returned to American soil hoping for peace, for the quiet comfort of her Brooklyn apartment after 3 long weeks at an international security conference. At 51, Nadia moved with the quiet grace of someone who had borne the weight of responsibility most of her life. Her deep brown eyes, framed by fine lines, carried wisdom and authority. She wore fitted beige slacks, a navy blouse, and a black cashmere blazer. Her appearance was calm, elegant, and unassuming. Nothing about her said threat. She stepped into the telescopic bridge connecting the plane to the terminal, greeted by the familiar chaos of JFK. Voices in English, Spanish, Mandarin, and French collided in the air. The sense of coffee, perfume, and recycled air wafted through the space. Nadia, like hundreds of others, made her way toward baggage claim. As she passed under the flickering fluorescent lights, dragging her small carry-on suitcase, she noticed 2 men in Port Authority uniforms standing near the carousel. One, Officer Thomas Green, was stocky and red-faced, with a beer belly pushing against his vest and a permanent scowl. The younger man beside him, Officer Andrew Nolan, mimicked Green's stance, trying to appear assertive. Their eyes found Nadia. She felt it immediately, a gaze that lingered too long, not out of protocol but suspicion. They approached her with deliberate pace, Green stopping directly in front of her, Nolan a step behind. "Excuse me, ma'am," Green said with a flat, patronizing tone. "Can we see some ID?" Nadia's posture remained calm. "Is there a problem, officers?" "Routine check," Green replied, eyeing her from head to toe. "ID, please." She knew this wasn't routine, but she had nothing to hide. She handed over her New York driver's license. Green inspected it slowly, then sneered. "Park Slope. That's a fancy neighborhood. Flying business class, dressed like this. What do you do for a living, MS?" "Monroe." "That has nothing to do with this check," she replied, voice clipped but respectful. "Am I suspected of something?" "We just have questions," Nolan chimed in, trying to sound confident, but clearly feeding off Green's lead. "You don't look like our usual passengers." Nadia felt her patience slipping. This was racial profiling, plain and simple. Her heart pounded, but she kept her tone steady. "If you don't have probable cause, I'd like to speak with your supervisor." That was all it took. Green's face darkened. "Obstruction. Cuff her." The terminal grew quiet as the scene unfolded. Phones were raised. Nadia barely had time to protest before Nolan twisted her arms behind her back and fastened the cold steel handcuffs. Pain shot through her shoulder. Her blazer bunched awkwardly as the restraints dug into her wrists. "What are you doing?" "I haven't done anything," she cried. "This is obstruction of justice," Green barked. The humiliation was unbearable. A decorated officer, standing in the arrivals hall like a criminal. She took a deep breath, forcing down rage and shame. "Officers," she said quietly, "I need to make a phone call. Now." Green laughed. "Who are you going to call? A lawyer?" "Mommy. My phone. From my purse. This is a matter of national security." The words hit like a shockwave. "National security?" Nolan asked, suddenly less sure of himself. "Get my phone," Nadia repeated, ice in her voice. Green hesitated, then nodded. Nolan retrieved her phone and handed it to her. "Dial this number," she said. He keyed in the digits, an access code rather than a phone number. The phone rang once. "Pentagon Secure Line Delta." "Identify yourself," came a deep, even voice. "Colonel Nadia Monroe, U.S. Army. Service ID 879-445-213. Connect me to General Sinclair, Alpha Priority." Silence. The officers froze. "Colonel Monroe, please hold." Another voice picked up. "Colonel Monroe, This is Major Ridley from General Sinclair's office. The General is currently unavailable, but I'm authorized for Alpha Protocol. Please describe your situation. Currently detained, handcuffed without cause at JFK, Terminal 4, by officers Thomas Green, badge 713, and Andrew Nolan, badge 1158. Requesting immediate federal intervention. The voice was all business now. Confirmed. Stay on the line. Response teams are en route. Nadia ended the call. The color drained from Green's face. Nolan looked like he might vomit. Colonel, we didn't know. Green stammered. You didn't ask. They fumbled with the keys, eventually unlocking the cuffs. Her wrists throbbed. 10 minutes later, higher-ranking officers appeared. A captain approached, demanding an explanation. Green tried to spin a story. Nadia showed her credentials. Colonel Monroe, the captain said, shocked and apologetic. I assure you, this will be dealt with. He turned to Green and Nolan. Weapons. Badges. My office. Now. Months later, the courtroom was full. Video evidence. Witnesses. The defense blamed stress, miscommunication. But the jury saw the truth. Green, for years federal prison. Nolan, 3 years. Justice. Nadia Monroe, in full dress uniform, sat silently as the verdicts were read. She felt no joy, only the heavy burden of what had taken. Back at the Pentagon, autumn turned the trees gold. Nadia looked out her office window, hands resting on her desk piled with files. The world moved on, but she would carry that day with her always, as a scar, a lesson, a reminder. Justice should not depend on rank, on power, on who you can call. It should depend on truth, and it must be for everyone. So she worked, and she kept fighting, for herself, and for those who couldn't.